We're now ready to queue up some versions to send to the Adobe Media Encoder, which, as you saw in our Adobe Cloud, it's a separate app, and it saves us a lot of time by automating the process of creating multiple versions. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a master file. So it's a really good idea as an editor to have a final export that can serve as the master file that all other copies can be made from. So obviously this is going to be the highest possible quality, and then from there you can make lesser quality for web output. So from here we're going to be back in Premiere Pro again, and we're going to do the same process: File, Export, Media. And in our export settings, we're going to switch things up to make our best possible version. We're going to create a preset that has minimal data and minimal image compression and absolutely no audio compression. So from the format, we're going to switch away from the H.264 and we're going to go down to QuickTime. This is the industry standard movie file format that's compatible with most editing systems, including Premiere Pro. If you're using a Windows system, at least as of the writing of this book, which is older, but it still may be true, you must have the QuickTime player installed in order to export this QuickTime file from the Adobe Media Encoder, which we're going to get to. So if you don't have QuickTime already downloaded on your Windows computer, you might need to do that. I'm working on a Mac, so I can't speak to that. All right, so we took care of this top part. It's going to be QuickTime. Then we're going to go down to this second tier, and we're going to switch to the Video tab right here. And in the video codec, and codecs are basically data compression algorithms that figure out how to give you a high quality movie with less file size. So what algorithm are we choosing from here? And the one that we want is the Apple ProRes 422. There's a HQ or a normal, and it doesn't, in this case we're just going to use the normal one, the 422. So Apple ProRes 422 is the version. This is good for master files. It is going to yield a file size that is much bigger from what we got from the H.264. And if you remember, the one that we just did straight out of Premiere in that format was, what, 400 and some megs? So this one's going to be even bigger. All right, moving down in this video section right here, there's a little scroll bar on the right. We're going to make sure that this box to the right of the width and the height is not checked. And then in the width and the height, we're going to set up the width to be 1920, and we're going to tab down, and our height should be 1080. I'm not sure why this is being silly like this. Tab. Okay, what's going on? I do love how every time I work through this, something different happens. Literally 10 seconds ago, this is not what I was seeing. At any rate, an easier way to handle this is when we get to this best or basic video settings, remember that this was shot 1920 by 1080 and now it's trying to make it bigger, and we don't want that. We want it to be as big as it ever was, but not bigger, because that would just interpolate the pixels and it would look ugly. So an easy way of doing this is just clicking right here where it says match the source. And if you click on that, 1920 by 1080, it matches our frame rate of 23.976, and the aspect ratio is automatically set to be square pixels. This refers to whether or not the pixels will be stretched horizontally to meet certain video broadcast standards. You typically don't want to be stretching your pixels, so having it square is perfect. Then we want to go to the Audio tab. We want to go right here, and we want to check a few things here as well. The audio codec uncompressed is what we want, and in the sample rate, depending on what yours is, we want to change it to be 48,000. The sample size should be 16-bit. I don't need to change that. And our audio channel output should be set to stereo. So in this drop down, if you see something else, turn it into saying stereo. From here, we're happy with this. This is going to yield a master file. So a couple things we want to do is we're going to come up to the top and we're going to click on the file name next to the output name. So notice it's now calling it final1.mov. It used to be a final.mp4. We're going to click on this and we're going to slightly rename it. We're going to call it poolside BTS underscore master. So that's just going to remind us that this is the biggest and best version, and it is going to continue to have the extension of a .mov. So we do want that. And we're going to say save. And then, so our name changed. Now we're going to come up here and we're going to go to the right of the word preset. And the first icon is to save this. So if we ever want to make a master file, again, instead of going through all these steps, we can save this as a preset. And so we're going to click there, and then obviously this is what it called it itself, but we're just going to call this, we're going to rename it QuickTime ProRes. QuickTime ProRes. And then the dimensions, just so we remind ourselves that this is a 1920 by 1080 file. And we're going to click OK. So we now have a preset called QuickTime ProRes, which is our master file at this physical size. Now, at the bottom of our export window, instead of doing what we did last time, which was export, we're actually just going to click on the button that says queue. We're going to queue up this version. And we're getting a little activity pop-up. And eventually a queue panel is going to pop up that's going to show what we're planning on doing. And that's, so far we have our QuickTime version. So I'll just wait for that to populate. I'll just show you that while I'm still waiting, the media encoder has indeed popped up. It's jumping. I have the splash screen. It's the 2020 version. So we'll just wait for that now.